Imagine an ancient manuscript shrouded in mystery and controversy that claims to fill significant gaps in the biblical stories that shape the world. A text that not only revisits familiar narratives like creation and the stories of the patriarchs, but expands them, revealing a cosmic perspective of God's divine plan. This manuscript is the Book of Jubilees, also known as Little Genesis. Hidden on the margins of biblical tradition for centuries, it offers fascinating details about heavenly time, forgotten commandments, and even the role of angels in the workings of the universe. And yet, this book was excluded from most versions of the Christian Bible. But why? What was it about its pages that made it so controversial, so dangerous, that the early church chose to ban it? In this video, we'll unlock the doors to this enigma, exploring why the 50 passages of the Book of Jubilees were deemed unfit for the canon, and how its content provides a radical and transformative perspective on humanity's relationship with God. From the outset, the Book of Jubilees presents something profoundly unusual: the idea that God didn't just create the world in 6 days, but also structured the very concept of time with divine precision. Forget the lunar calendar we're familiar with. The Book of Jubilees advocates a solar calendar of 364 days, divided into perfect cycles of 4 seasons, each with 91 days. According to the text, this celestial calendar was overseen by angels and designed to align earthly time with God's cosmic order. More than just a system for counting days, it symbolizes an invitation to live in total harmony with the divine plan. And then the book makes a bold accusation. By adopting a lunar calendar, ancient cultures, including the Israelites, deviated from this sacred order, plunging the world into spiritual chaos. But that's just the beginning. The Book of Jubilees doesn't simply unveil a new structure of time. It also introduces angels as fundamental agents in maintaining cosmic order, describing how they were created on the first day of creation and assigned vital roles in organizing the seasons and transmitting divine laws. Can you imagine the impact of these ideas? A text that challenges the very system by which we measure days and sacred celebrations. A text that claims humanity's disconnection from divine time has led to a spiritual estrangement from God. A text that, from its earliest days, was deemed too controversial to include in the Bible. In this video, we'll journey through the pages of this forbidden book, uncovering its secrets and exploring the reasons behind its exclusion. Prepare to dive into a narrative unlike anything you've heard before, where creation, the patriarchs, and divine laws take on new dimensions. Stay with us until the end, because what you discover might change how you view the Bible, time, and even humanity's purpose. The Book of Jubilees picks up where Genesis left off, but rather than repeating the story as we know it, it expands the narrative with extraordinary details. From the very first day of creation, we are introduced to something absent from the traditional biblical text: the creation of angels. According to the Book of Jubilees, before any life on earth, God created angels as administrators of the universe. These celestial beings were not merely God's messengers, but guardians of time, tasked with ensuring that the cosmos remained in perfect harmony with his divine will. These angels performed specific functions. Some oversaw the movements of the sun, moon, and stars, while others were responsible for transmitting divine laws to humanity. A special group, known as the Angels of the Presence, had an even higher role: to serve directly before God's throne and ensure his commands were carried out throughout creation. This idea of angels actively maintaining cosmic order adds a unique depth to creation. It's not merely the beginning of everything. It's the establishment of an interconnected system where every element, from the smallest grain of sand to the celestial bodies, operates in total obedience to God's will. But the Book of Jubilees goes further by detailing the concept of sacred time. From the start, God structured time with absolute precision. The text argues that humanity was designed to live according to a solar calendar of 364 days, where each season has exactly 91 days, and the cycles of weeks and years remain perfectly aligned. This celestial calendar ensured that sacred days, such as the Sabbath and festivals, were observed correctly. However, the book warns that adopting lunar calendars, followed by many ancient cultures, including the Israelites, was a grave breach of this divine order, bringing spiritual disorder and disconnecting humanity from the Creator. This divergence wasn't a trivial error. To the Book of Jubilees, following the lunar calendar was an act of disobedience to God. It describes how, by adopting this irregular system, humanity began celebrating festivals on the wrong days, ignoring Sabbaths, and losing alignment with the sacred cycles established at creation. When man abandons the celestial reckoning of time, the text states, chaos reigns on earth. Imagine for a moment the magnitude of this claim. This isn't merely a debate about how to measure time. It's something the Book of Jubilees describes as a violation of the very structure of creation. It's a call to rethink how humanity interacts with the divine, not just in our actions, but in the very rhythm of our existence. And there's more. The role of angels, the structure of time, and divine laws are not isolated elements in this narrative. They weave together to form the foundation of a story that not only complements Genesis, but transforms it into something greater, something cosmic. While the angels ensure that the heavens remain in order, humanity is called to maintain that harmony in their daily lives. When we fail, chaos enters, and this is something the Book of Jubilees does not shy away from exploring. But if creation was structured with such precision, why did humanity stray from this path? And what happens when we disconnect from divine time? These are questions the book begins to answer as it progresses. But one thing is certain: what follows challenges everything we know about the stories of the patriarchs and God's laws. As the Book of Jubilees unfolds, it leads us into a deeply detailed retelling of the story of Adam, Eve, and their descendants. While Genesis mentions the creation of humankind and the introduction of sin into the world, Jubilees adds layers of context that expand the narrative, revealing a cosmic perspective on humanity's fall and the divine purpose that would begin to unfold through the patriarchs. According to the Book of Jubilees, after creating Adam, God immediately gave him a set of laws to govern his life and his descendants. This wasn't just the command to tend the Garden of Eden, but a moral and spiritual code that included observing the Sabbath, laws of purity, and instructions on marriage and worship. These laws, delivered through angels, formed the foundation of the relationship between God and humanity. However, when Adam and Eve disobeyed by eating the forbidden fruit, they not only broke this relationship, but also opened the door for chaos and disorder to enter the world. The story of the first sin is enriched with details about the spiritual consequences of this transgression. The angels, witnessing the fall, understood that humanity could no longer remain in harmony with the divine order. Jubilees describes how Adam's fall had a cosmic impact, corrupting not just human hearts, but also the order of creation itself. It was at this moment that the angels of the presence began to interact more directly with humanity, instructing them to follow divine laws as a way to mitigate the effects of this corruption. But the chaos didn't stop there. The story of Cain and Abel, which Genesis focuses on as the first murder, is significantly expanded. Jubilees not only recounts Abel's death, but also delves into the spiritual impact of this tragedy. The book portrays Abel as a guardian of divine laws, someone who deeply understood God's desire for a just humanity. Cain's murder of Abel, therefore, was more than a crime. It was an act of rebellion against divine order. While Cain was cursed and cast out, Jubilees highlights Seth, the third son of Adam and Eve, as humanity's new hope. Seth is depicted as someone who upholds justice and maintains the connection to the commandments delivered by the angels. As the narrative progresses, another shocking revelation emerges: the corruption of generations before the flood. While Genesis briefly mentions the sons of God and the Nephilim, the Book of Jubilees delves deeply into these events, describing how fallen angels imparted forbidden knowledge to humanity. This knowledge, which included magical practices, idolatry, and even weapons of war, further corrupted humanity, plunging it into such moral decay that God decided to reset creation through the flood. This is where Noah's role gains even greater significance. While Genesis describes Noah as righteous and obedient, Jubilees reveals that he not only found favor in God's eyes, but also received detailed instructions from angels on how to preserve the purity of his lineage and build the ark. The book portrays Noah as the bearer of a renewed covenant, someone who not only survived the flood, but was entrusted with restoring divine order on earth. After the flood, Jubilees recounts how God made a covenant with Noah, promising never to destroy the earth again, while reinforcing the laws he and his descendants were to follow. The Sabbath is reaffirmed as a fundamental pillar along with laws of sacrifice and purity. The book emphasizes that these laws were not later inventions, but commands passed down since Adam, now to be observed even more rigorously to prevent another moral collapse. But what happens when Noah's descendants, much like their ancestors, begin to stray once again? What would God do to ensure his order was preserved? These questions lead us to the emergence of Abraham, a man who would not only rebel against the idolatry of his time, but also become the channel for an eternal promise, a promise that would begin to change the destiny of humanity. Abraham's story is a central focus in the Book of Jubilees, and unlike what we see in Genesis, this narrative is enriched with details that reveal how Abraham was shaped early on to play a crucial role in God's divine plan. The text presents Abraham not merely as a man of faith, but as a spiritual revolutionary, chosen by God to carry his covenant amid a world steeped in idolatry and corruption. According to Jubilees, Abraham grew up in a deeply pagan environment. His father, Terah, was an idol maker and a devout follower of the polytheistic religions that dominated Mesopotamia. Abraham's home was filled with wooden and stone images, representations of the false gods worshipped by his family and community. Yet, even in his youth, Abraham began to question these practices. He would look at the statues and wonder how inanimate objects could be worthy of worship. His restless mind led him to a direct confrontation with his father. In an act of spiritual defiance, Jubilees recounts how Abraham destroyed Terah's idols. He burned the images publicly and fled into the wilderness, where he began to seek God earnestly and sincerely. It was in this solitude that God revealed to Abraham a greater purpose, choosing him to be the bearer of his promises and the father of a nation destined to uphold justice and divine commandments. The Book of Jubilees portrays this divine choice as part of a much larger plan. Abraham was not just a leader, he was the next link in an unbroken chain of righteous men, starting with Adam, who had received divine laws directly from angels. These laws, recorded on the heavenly tablets, included the Sabbath, sacrifices, and purity commandments, all of which Abraham readily embraced. He was not initiating something new. He was restoring an eternal covenant that had been neglected by previous generations. Abraham's relationship with God is described as profoundly intimate. Jubilees narrates how God guided him through every stage of his life, from his departure from Haran to his arrival in the land of Canaan. At every step, Abraham displayed unwavering obedience. He built altars, offered sacrifices, and meticulously followed the instructions of angels who frequently visited him to reaffirm the divine purpose. This direct connection between Abraham and celestial messengers highlights the cosmic significance of his mission. One of the most significant moments in Abraham's life, according to Jubilees, was the promise of Isaac's birth. Abraham and Sarah, advanced in age, had lost hope of having a child, but God assured them they would be blessed with an heir. This promise, however, carried tremendous responsibility. Isaac was to be raised as the bearer of the divine covenant, someone who would continue Abraham's legacy of justice. Jubilees details how Abraham, even before Isaac's birth, received specific instructions from God on how to raise his son, ensuring he would be taught in the ways of the Lord. Additionally, Jubilees expands on the significance of the covenant of circumcision, which in Genesis is described as a sign of Abraham's commitment to God. In the Book of Jubilees, circumcision is presented as a practice with far older roots, inscribed on the heavenly tablets since the dawn of creation. Abraham was merely the first to restore this practice as a visible symbol of his eternal covenant with God. Circumcising Isaac was not just a ritual, it was a declaration that Abraham and his descendants would remain aligned with divine order for all future generations. Jubilees also describes how Abraham faced challenges that tested his faith and obedience throughout his journey. Notably, the book pays special attention to the episode in which Abraham confronted the pagan kings of the region, defending the values of justice and loyalty to God. Abraham did not only fight physically but also spiritually, rejecting alliances with corrupt leaders and reaffirming his complete trust in God. Ultimately, the Book of Jubilees positions Abraham as the model of faithfulness and righteousness, someone who adhered to divine laws so meticulously that his actions reverberated through generations. His life was a testament that even amid idolatry and corruption, it was possible to live in complete obedience to God. Abraham's impact extended far beyond his own lineage, for he was laying the groundwork for a promise that would transcend Israel's boundaries and touch all of humanity. But this story was far from over. Abraham was about to face the greatest test of his life, the sacrifice of Isaac. In this ultimate trial, Abraham's faith would be pushed to its limits, revealing the lengths to which he was willing to go to fulfill God's purpose. It was a decision that would not only define his legacy, but also shape humanity's destiny forever. The sacrifice of Isaac, also known as the story of the Akedah, is one of the most iconic moments in Abraham's life, and the Book of Jubilees offers a rich and detailed perspective on this pivotal event. Far beyond what Genesis presents, Jubilees places this episode within a cosmic context, involving spiritual forces, unseen challenges, and a purpose that transcended Abraham himself. This moment was not just a test of faith, it was a milestone in the divine plan that would echo through all generations. According to the Book of Jubilees, Abraham's test did not arise merely as a desire from God to evaluate his obedience. The narrative reveals that the trial was proposed by Mastema, a figure identified as the leader of the forces of evil, often associated with Satan. Mastema sought to prove that Abraham's faith was shallow and that he would not remain faithful if God asked him for something as extreme as the sacrifice of his only son. God allowed this test to take place, not only to confirm Abraham's loyalty, but also to reveal the depth of the divine plan. Abraham received the command to sacrifice Isaac in a direct vision, accompanied by celestial guidance. The text describes how Abraham was shaken, but did not hesitate to obey. He prepared for the journey with calm and determination, hiding the true purpose of the trip from Isaac. During their journey to Mount Moriah, where the sacrifice would take place, Abraham was haunted by doubts, but maintained his unwavering trust in God. Jubilees details how he sought divine signs as he advanced, praying silently for the strength to complete what seemed to be an impossible task. Meanwhile, Isaac, unaware of what lay ahead, followed his father with serene obedience. The interaction between the two is portrayed in a touching manner, highlighting the trust Isaac placed in Abraham. In a particularly moving moment, Isaac asks about the lamb for the sacrifice, and Abraham, in a response reflecting his unshakable faith, says, "God will provide the lamb for himself." This phrase, recorded in both Genesis and Jubilees, carries special weight here, pointing to Abraham's confidence that God would intervene at the right moment. When they arrived at the top of Mount Moriah, Abraham built the altar with his own hands, arranging the wood for the sacrifice. In an act of absolute obedience, and he explained to Isaac what God had commanded. Jubilees describes Isaac's reaction as a remarkable demonstration of courage. He not only accepted his fate, but surrendered willingly, showing that the faith Abraham had instilled in his son was both profound and genuine. Isaac asked only that Abraham not hesitate to fulfill God's will, a scene that reflects the total trust both father and son had in God. At the moment Abraham raised the knife to sacrifice his son, the Book of Jubilees introduces a dramatic intervention. An angel sent by God appeared, commanding Abraham to stop immediately. The celestial voice declared that Abraham had proven his faithfulness and need go no further. At this point, Mastema was silenced, unable to refute the evidence of Abraham's unwavering commitment to God. The victory was not only Abraham's but humanity's, represented by his willingness to obey even in the face of the greatest sacrifice. Jubilees places significant emphasis on the substitution of Isaac with a ram, miraculously provided by God. The text highlights that this was not merely an act of mercy, but a prophetic symbol. The ram represented the redemption that would come in the future when God would provide a definitive sacrifice to atone for humanity's sins. This connection between the Akedah and the redemptive sacrifice is a powerful theme that runs throughout Jubilee's narrative. After the sacrifice, the text describes a heavenly celebration. Angels sang praises, and Abraham was extraordinarily blessed. God reaffirmed his promises to multiply Abraham's descendants and make them a blessing to all the nations of the earth. Isaac, in turn, was declared the direct heir of the divine covenant, carrying within himself the continuation of God's plan. The impact of this event is immeasurable. Abraham not only passed the test, but demonstrated that obedience to God is the foundation of true faith. His willingness to sacrifice Isaac became an eternal example of absolute trust in the divine plan. Isaac, by submitting humbly, showed that faith transcends generations, passing from father to son as a sacred legacy. The Book of Jubilees also connects this event to Israel's future, as suggesting that the faith Abraham demonstrated at that moment would become the foundation upon which the nation would be built. The story of Isaac's sacrifice was not just about Abraham and his son. It was a milestone in the cosmic plan, pointing toward the day when all divine promises would be fulfilled in a Redeemer who would bring reconciliation and redemption to all humanity. But Abraham's journey was not yet over. He would continue to face challenges, guide his family in God's ways, and lay the foundation for his descendants to flourish as the chosen nation. The sacrifice of Isaac, though completed, was just one of the many chapters in Abraham's grand story of faith and fidelity. After the extraordinary event on Mount Moriah, Abraham returned with Isaac, forever marked by the test they had faced together. This moment was not only a turning point in their lives, but also a reaffirmation of the divine covenant and the central role of Abraham and his descendants in God's plan for humanity. The Book of Jubilees delves deeper into this legacy, portraying how the promises made to Abraham were not mere words, but part of a detailed and eternal cosmic plan. Back in his homeland, Abraham dedicated himself to ensuring his lineage remained faithful to God. He began teaching Isaac with renewed intensity about the divine laws and principles that should guide his life. According to Jubilees, these teachings included not only the observance of the Sabbath and purity laws, but also the understanding of how to live in alignment with the sacred time established by God. Abraham knew Isaac would be the next guardian of the covenant, and that his responsibility was immense, not only to preserve the lineage, but also to keep alive the bond between God and humanity. Jubilees presents Abraham as a wise mentor and details how he shared stories of his own faith journey with Isaac. He spoke of how God called him out of Ur of the Chaldeans, the promises made under the stars, and the challenges he faced as he left everything behind to follow the unknown. Each account was not just a story of the past, but a reminder of God's faithfulness and the necessity of obedience, even in the most difficult moments. Isaac listened intently, absorbing each lesson and understanding the weight he bore as the direct heir of the covenant. During this time, the Book of Jubilees emphasizes Isaac's role as a bridge between generations. He was not merely an obedient son. He was to become the father of a nation that would carry God's light to the world. This mission, however, required preparation. Abraham, with the help of angelic messengers sent by God, guided Isaac in how to live a life of holiness. He was instructed to avoid alliances with pagan peoples, reject idolatry, and pursue purity in all areas of life. The text underscores that Isaac was being shaped to be a spiritual leader, not only guiding his family, but also serving as an example for future generations. One of Abraham's most important decisions was ensuring a marriage that would strengthen the divine covenant. Jubilees recounts how Abraham sent a faithful servant to find a wife for Isaac among his relatives, ensuring he would not marry into idolatrous cultures. This event, retold in vivid detail, showcases Abraham's dedication to preserving the chosen lineage. When Rebekah was brought to Isaac, the text describes her as a woman prepared by God to be his companion, someone who shared the same values and was committed to the divine covenant. The marriage of Isaac and Rebekah was more than a family union. It was the continuation of God's plan. They became not just a couple, but the foundation of a lineage destined to bring blessings to all humanity. Jubilees describes how Rebekah, with her own faith and determination, played a vital role alongside Isaac, ensuring that Abraham's teachings were passed down to their children. The covenant, built upon Abraham's obedience and faith, would now expand through Isaac. As Isaac began his married life, Abraham looked to the future with a profound sense of fulfillment. He knew he had fulfilled his role as patriarch, preparing Isaac to lead the next chapter of the divine story. The Book of Jubilees highlights that Abraham spent his final years in peace, surrounded by his family and comforted by the certainty that God's plan would continue through his descendants. However, Isaac's life would not be free of challenges. Jubilees suggests he would face his own trials, including family disputes, conflicts with neighboring nations, and the need to protect the covenant against external influences. Isaac would have to carry Abraham's legacy with the same unwavering faith and commitment. He understood that, like his father, he would be called to demonstrate complete obedience and trust in God, even in difficult circumstances. The text of Jubilees concludes this chapter of Abraham and Isaac's lives by emphasizing the continuity of the divine covenant. Abraham was the father of faith, but Isaac would become the guardian of the covenant, tasked with upholding God's promises and paving the way for the next generation. This chapter of the narrative serves as a powerful reminder that Abraham's faithfulness not only shaped his life, but also molded the future of an entire nation, and ultimately, the world. Abraham knew that the divine plan would transcend his own existence and that the seeds he had planted would continue to grow for generations. Isaac was the living proof of that promise, someone molded by faith, obedience, and commitment to the eternal covenant. The Book of Jubilees makes it clear that Isaac's role in God's plan was essential, and that, like Abraham, he was destined to be a channel of divine blessings for all humanity. With Abraham's passing, the story of his sacred lineage did not just continue, it deepened. Isaac, now the patriarch, assumed the role of the bearer of the divine covenant. He understood the immense responsibility on his shoulders. He was not just the father of a family, but the guardian of the eternal promises God had made to Abraham. The Book of Jubilees reveals that Isaac not only carried this legacy, but lived in a way that preserved and expanded the divine blessings. In the years that followed, Isaac faced challenges that tested his faith. The Book of Jubilees details conflicts with neighboring peoples, especially the Philistines, who constantly disputed wells and land with him. However, unlike other leaders who chose war, Isaac chose peace. He understood that his mission was to live according to God's precepts, trusting that he would provide even in the midst of adversity. Jubilees highlights how instead of retaliating, Isaac would move to other territories, dig new wells, and always find water, a sign of God's constant provision. Isaac's peaceful and righteous approach not only preserved his family, but served as a testimony to those around him. He demonstrated that trusting in God was more powerful than any military strength or political strategy. His life became a living reflection of Abraham's promises, showing that even in a world filled with conflict, those who walk with God find direction, protection, and prosperity. Rebekah also played a crucial role during this period. As the mother of Esau and Jacob, she faced the challenge of raising two sons who would follow very different paths. Jubilees delves into Rebekah's relationship with Jacob, highlighting how she discerned that he was chosen to carry on the covenant. The narrative portrays Rebekah as a woman of unshakable faith, interceding for her family and guiding her sons in the ways of the Lord, even when faced with difficult decisions. The pivotal moment in Isaac and Rebekah's lives came when Jacob, following his mother's instructions, received the blessing that originally seemed destined for Esau. Although this story, recounted in both Genesis and Jubilees, is often seen as an act of deception, the Book of Jubilees offers a different perspective. It emphasizes that Jacob's selection was not a human error, but the fulfillment of God's plan. From the womb, Jacob had been destined to carry the covenant, and his blessing marked a key step in the unfolding of God's purpose. As Jacob departed to begin his own journey, Isaac reflected on the legacy now being passed to the next generation. He had fulfilled his mission, preserved the covenant, and prepared Jacob to continue the work Abraham had begun. But the story doesn't end here. Jubilees suggests that Isaac understood his life was just one piece of a much larger plan, a plan that would transcend generations and culminate in something grand. The legacy of Abraham and Isaac was not merely a story of faith and obedience, but a spiritual roadmap for all who seek to live in alignment with God. The Book of Jubilees reminds us that, like Abraham and Isaac, we are called to trust in God, even when the challenges seem insurmountable. We are called to be guardians of divine promises, living in a way that inspires and impacts those around us. Now that you've followed this incredible journey through the lives of Abraham and Isaac, let me ask, what can you learn from them? Perhaps it's Abraham's courage to step into the unknown, or Isaac's patience in the face of adversity. Or maybe it's the simple reminder that even in moments of doubt, God's promises remain unchanging. If this story inspired you, share in the comments which part touched your heart the most. Your feedback is important and helps enrich this community of learning and faith. We want to know, how can you apply the lessons of Abraham and Isaac in your life? And before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. By doing so, you'll not only receive content like this directly in your feed, but also help us bring these messages to more people. Think about it. Every like, comment, and share can be the seed that transforms someone's life. Finally, thank you for joining us on this journey. May the words of Abraham and Isaac continue to echo in your life, bringing inspiration, strength, and purpose. And never forget, you too can be a channel of blessings in the lives of others, just as Abraham and Isaac were. Until the next video, and may God bless you and your family.